When my cousin and I were younger, we were pretty stupid. Back then, we had both just turned 16 and had absolutely no sense of self preservation. Recently, one of our family members had just died, and we were going down to the next state over to attend the funeral. A few things I should mention before we actually start the story is that me and my cousin were definitely on the wrong side of intelligence, sharing approximately one brain cell between the two of us. We did pretty much everything together, but we weren't exactly the smartest in doing it. It is kind of a miracle that we haven't died yet. So, for this trip in particular, we took his BRZ down to the next state for a roughly 10-hour drive. Now, you might be wondering why I felt the need to specify that he had a BRZ. It's actually part of pointing out how sped this guy is. You'd think that having it would mean he had money, his BRZ was a pretty expensive car. But no, he didn't actually have the money or anything, but he bought it anyways because he's an absolute genius. Not the point. We left at about 1 in the morning and drove for a couple of hours before realizing that we had absolutely no exit to take for the next 200 miles. And this area was basically just a flat land with no buildings in either direction, which, gets pretty fucking boring to look at after a couple of hours. But it did come with a bright side. Since there was no buildings in either direction and nothing to actually do there, this road had no cops. So there was no traffic going through this area. We maybe ran into 5 or 6 cars on the way there, but we didn't see any cops for the entire trip except at the beginning and end, leaving and entering the cities. So, we started screwing around. Initially, I was playing on my phone for a couple of hours, until I noticed we were going a little faster than I'd expected. I turn my head, look at the dashboard. My cousin's currently driving at, 140 miles an hour, just without a care in the world. Doesn't even seem like it's phasing him. And I might be a few things, I'm not exactly the brightest, but I'm not suicidal. So I turn and look at him and just go, "Hey man, you mind slowing down a bit? I don't want to die." And he just gives me this blank look and says, "Yeah, alright, but you gotta steer." So that was the start of the shenanigans we got up to on this road trip. Spent roughly the next 20 minutes steering while he watched a show on his phone, which actually wasn't that bad, save for the fact that he was still going about 100 miles an hour, and steering from the wrong seat is a little more difficult than you might think. Anyways, after we finished up with that particular fun, we started moving on to more and more ridiculous shit, including but not limited to seeing how long we could go without touching the wheel on a straight road. Our record was about 10 minutes. It was actually kind of fucking impressive now that I think about it. But after that, we just tried to see how long he could drive with his eyes closed and just me telling him which ways to adjust the wheel. That was probably the worst thing we did. We almost crashed like twice. But I'd say the stupidest one though, and the one that you probably clicked the video for, was the time I actually got out of the car and onto the hood for about 10 minutes. Now, what led up to this was after about an hour of not doing much, I'd start to get really hot. The thing about my cousin is he likes to keep his car very hot. Far too hot for me, at least. So after a while, I started to sweat and told him that I had to turn the AC up. Jokingly, he suggested that I get on the hood instead and get some fresh air if it's too much for me. And me, the absolute Einstein-level genius I was at the time, thought that it would be hilarious and climbed out of the roof. I slid down the windshield and sat on the hood. Curled my fingers underneath and just gripped for my life. It was fucking terrifying. So much so that I was actually freezing because I live in a cold state and it was like the middle of March, I think. But I was too scared to let go and get back in because he was going about 90 miles an hour and I didn't want to fly over the top of the car. So after about 10 minutes of sitting there, I felt him slow down a bit and immediately scurried up to slide back in and fell face first into the car as I was trying not to go over the sunroof. It hurt like shit, but afterwards it was all good and we had a pretty chill rest of the road trip. Anyways, subscribe.